Welcome to the Home Education with Ease podcast. I'm your host, Christine Furman, a homeschool mom, entrepreneur, and educator with over 20 years of experience in the areas of elementary and special education. It's my mission to help you create lifelong learners and embrace a holistic approach to education at home. I'll be sharing practical strategies, inspiration, and resources to support your family. Whether you're a stay-at-home mom, a business owner, or balancing work and homeschool, you're in the right place to connect with a community that values education just as much as you do. Join us each week as we ditch the stress, embrace the joy of learning, and set your family up for a lifetime of success. Hello, and welcome back to Home Education with Ease. I'm your host, Christine Furman, and today we are celebrating a very special occasion. We're celebrating Dr. Seuss Day. Whether you're a parent, an educator, or someone who just simply loves the magic of storytelling and reading, this episode is definitely for you. We're going to dive into the importance of reading with our kids, why it's such a game changer in their development, and how we can make it fun and engaging, just like Dr. Seuss has done for us in so many of the books that he's written. Well, Dr. Seuss Day is celebrated on March 2nd, which marks his birthday of Theodore Seuss Geisel, the beloved author of our stories that we all love and know, Green Eggs and Ham, The Cat in the Hat, Oh, the Places You'll Go, some of my favorites for sure, especially starting out in those early literacy years of reading. Lots of rhyming, lots of fun stories, lots of wacky words, and sometimes words that maybe we didn't know, right? But it's going to be a lot of fun diving into this week and celebrating Dr. Seuss Day. And Dr. Seuss Day is also part of National Read Across America Week, which I remember this whenever I was teaching, and I just love this campaign so much because it really is encouraging children to develop a love for reading. And that, to me, is so important. That's why we're going to talk about reading with our kids in 2 episodes this time. We're going to dive into the importance of reading and how we can enjoy that reading experience with our kids. And then next week, we're going to also talk about what if your child's struggling to read? What are some of the things that we need to do then? So let's dive into today. And here are some things about Dr. Seuss, right? He believed in making reading fun, silly, and adventurous. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And we're going to incorporate that fun, that adventure into reading with our own kids and why that's so important. So reading is more than just an educational activity. There's bonding that happens with our kids. It's an opportunity for our kids to imagine and setting them up for a lifetime long success in reading and how that transfers throughout all of their education. So maybe you read for 5 minutes before bed, or maybe you just go on this whole storytelling adventure. I have some clients that tell me that they make up stories with their families, and I love that so much. And maybe reading is something that you do as part of your day, bedtime. Maybe you take a book, your kids take a book with you all the time. So we're going to explore more of what that means and how that matters and how we can make that an enjoyable part of your family's routine. So before we dive in though, I would love to know, what is your child's favorite book series? And maybe something that you like to read with your kids. Because I always love to find new and exciting books for our kids. I'm a huge advocate of the Magic Tree House chapter books and fact trackers for when our kids get to that 2nd, 3rd grade. And even before that, we can read these stories with our kids because it's full of not only imagination, but also facts. Like, we have learned so many things reading those books, and that is the foundation of the reading fundamental program that I've created. But even before that, I incorporate so many different stories and books into the reading foundation and really setting our kids up for success. So I would love to know, what are some of those books that you guys love reading in your home? And what are some of your kids' favorite books? And also, maybe do you have some reading traditions in your home? Do you story tell with your kids? Do you make up stories while you're on a road trip? Do you snuggle up in front of the fireplace every night and read before bed? Do you crawl into bed and read? I would just love to know. I love learning about how you incorporate reading into your everyday life. And the other thing I would love to know is, do you have any Dr. Seuss memories? Right? So, whether your kids are in school or if you're homeschooling your kids, you can incorporate some Dr. Seuss fun into their reading. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about ways that we do that. So I have an entire EduPlay Learning collection all about Dr. Seuss. And we do activities, we do crafts, we have a poem, we do rhyming, we have snacks, all the things related to Dr. Seuss and around a lot of his books that he has. So that is something that I want to share with you guys as well. And I just would love to know, what are some of those stories and Dr. Seuss memories you have. So feel free to share any of that in the Home Education with Ease Facebook group, or send me a message. And I would just love to be able to continue that conversation and learn more about how you're incorporating reading into your home. Well, let's dive in. Let's dive into this wonderful world of reading today. So, why is reading with our kids so essential? Let's talk about that first. Well, number one, it's going to boost their literacy skills. Think vocabulary, comprehension, language development. And how can we do this? Well, while we're reading with our kids, stop and ask them questions. See if they have an idea of what might happen next. Ask if they know what that word means. There's your vocabulary, right? A lot of times we can read a word, but do we actually know what it means? So diving into more of that vocabulary while we're reading and diving into asking them those questions. Who is this story about? Where is it taking place? What is happening? What's the problem? What's the solution? Why did this happen? The cause and effect. What's the main idea of the whole thing? What is this mostly about? Let me just give you a little insight here. When we're asking these questions, you are teaching them all of the reading strategies and skills. So, sure, could we do individual lessons on all of these topics? Absolutely. Like, I was working with one of my students the other day, and we were talking about the concept of comparing and contrasting. We were reading a passage, and the one that's sticking out in my mind was about foxes and cats. And in this one passage, it talked about what are things that are the same and what are things that are different. And we talked about it. We read this passage, and easily we were able to identify what's something that's the same and what's something that's different. And we made a Venn diagram. And then I explained to him that by doing this, by reading a passage and going further, and instead of just reading the words that are there, asking the questions, doing a little activity that goes with it, making the Venn diagram, that's building their literacy skills. That's allowing them to learn these big concepts without it being such a big lesson. And that's why, for me, education truly does happen everywhere and all the time. It does not have to be sitting down, listening to a lesson at the blackboard, doing a whole 20-minute presentation on a specific skill, where for me, it's all about weaving these skills into everything that we do all the time. So when you're reading with your kids, you're incorporating vocabulary by asking them what this word means. Could you take it a step further and say, okay, now here are the list of vocabulary words from this chapter that we just read, and I want you to go look them up, whether it's in an actual dictionary or online, And I want you to write down the definition. What does this word actually mean before I give them the actual definition? Of course, I ask them what they think it means. And then they look it up and they're like, whoa, that wasn't even what I thought it meant. And now they've developed these skills. So a lot of times our kids can read words, but they don't necessarily know the meaning of them. So incorporating that. They can read a passage, but maybe they're missing the big picture of, well, what's actually happening here? Who are the characters? Where does the story take place? So just starting to ask them these questions makes a huge, huge difference in their literacy skills, in their reading confidence. So that is something that I will touch way more on in the next episode is all about our children's reading confidence. But these are the skills, these are the building blocks of that confidence for our kids. So ask the questions, have a discussion while you're reading. And just remember that you are teaching them all of these reading strategies. You may not even know it, and your kids don't even know it. The other thing, whenever it comes to reading with our kids, is making sure that we're actually taking the time to listen to them. Don't be distracted when our kids are reading. That's really important. When it's their time to read, we're sitting there and we're actually following along in the book and correcting them. Like, oh, nope, you know what? That's not what that word says. Even if it's a word they know, or you know what? The sentence doesn't say that. Let's reread this sentence again and read exactly what's there. And you're just continuing to build up their reading skills. So, really listening to them, really being completely focused, removing all distractions, and asking those questions. So, so important. So, let's talk about then the bond that happens, right? By doing that, you're strengthening this bond with your child. Because number one, you're incorporating some quality time. You're building emotional connections, which we're going to talk about all of our children's emotions too. We're going to talk about that later this month as well, and their emotional intelligence. But enjoy that time with your kids. Snuggle up on the couch, sit in front of the fire, get cozy, wrap up in a blanket, go to the park whenever it's a nice sunny day, read at the park, get a blanket. Like, literally, it can be this simple. Read while you're in the car. I know for us, when we have piano on Tuesdays, we read in the car because Tuesdays are a little bit of a busy day for us. So it's a great way to incorporate our schoolwork into our busy day of errands. And they read while they're in the car. They do schoolwork while the other one is doing piano lessons. And it's allowing us then to again, build that bond instead of cranking up the music or looking at a screen or being in front of a tablet. Like, really, I'm encouraging you to give your child a book instead of giving them the screens. And I know whenever my kids were little, I had a bag full of books. So I had books and I had toys and I had all different things to engage them while we were at a restaurant, while we were at the grocery store, while we were, many different things. Now, of course, there are times when I do give my kids the screen where it's like we're all tapped out, right? Whether we've had a busy day and it's like, you know what? That's fine. You need a break. I need a break. So definitely there are moments and there are times for that, but try to encourage them first to pick up a book and read. And here's the other thing while you're waiting at an appointment, again, while you're at the grocery store, right? So many opportunities to sneak in some reading time, if it is only 10 to 15 minutes. So, why this is so important is because it's encouraging a love for learning. And if you guys know me at all, if you've listened to any of my episodes, you know that I'm all about that love for learning, creating, raising lifetime learners. And reading really does help that. So I encourage you and I encourage our kids to develop this lifelong reading habit. And I want them to enjoy reading. I want my kids to enjoy reading. I want them to go and pick up a book on their own. And I see that. So I'll tell you, for us, every night we would snuggle up in bed and we would read a story. And that was like one of my favorite, bedtime routine moments, right? They would get their bath, they would get ready for bed, and then we would most likely pick one of the beds, and we would all snuggle up and we would read a story. And then as they continued to get older, Ella started reading the story. Then Alex started reading the story. And now we're at the point where they both are in their own rooms and they read their own books. And it is a little bittersweet, right? Where I'm like, oh man, I miss those moments of like all snuggling up and getting in bed and reading the story for the week, or, finishing our chapter book or whatever it was. But wow, what a gift it is to walk into both of their bedrooms. One, have them completely do their bedtime routine independently because they know the routine and we've prepared them to do that routine independently. And two, to watch them then crawl into bed and grab their book and just start reading and wind down for the evening before they turn out the lights for bed. Like, that to me is, again, a bittersweet moment because it just shows you how much and how fast the time goes and how quickly they grow up. But that's what I want. I wanted them to want to read, right? I don't know if you've ever saw, I think it was the Breakup movie with Jennifer Aniston and Vince Vaughn, when she says, I want you to want to do the dishes, That's really what I want here. I always think of that. Like, I want them to want to pick up a book and read for fun. I want them to enjoy it. So how do we do that? Well, finding books that are interesting for them, reading with them, engaging with them, asking of them, what are they reading? And stay tuned for additional ideas next episode on if your child is struggling to read, what are some ideas? So I've got some of those next episode as well. So be sure to join us back next week. All right. Another reason why it's essential to build our reading fundamentals for our kids and our reading skills is it's enhancing their imagination and their creativity. It's helping them to think and dream big. It's helping them to think critically. What's happening next in this story? What do you think is going to happen? Well, what would you do in this situation? Right? So watching our kids' imagination run wild while they read, ask them questions. Ask them what that story is all about. And let them tell you every single little detail because that's important. Yes, it may seem like eternity sometimes, like, oh my goodness, okay. All right, yep, I understand. Yep, trust me, I get that. But gosh, just giving them 5 minutes of undivided attention for them to just totally tell you their whole story, what they've just read, is priceless. Because again, you're building that connection with your child. You're encouraging that reading and saying, wow, this sounds like a very interesting book. I'm so glad that you're loving it. So ask those higher level questions because it's all building their reading literacy. And if you have any questions on this, please be sure to reach out to me. I do have reading programs. So if you are interested in any reading programs, I start with young kiddos, the Learn Your Letters program. I also have reading fundamentals, and then I just continue working my way up in the different levels for reading fundamentals of building this literacy in our children. So if that is something they're like, I need more of this, let me know. We can definitely find something that best fits you and your family. All right, so let's talk about now fun and engaging ways to read with our kids. So how can we make reading fun? Maybe you're like, oh my goodness, I don't like to read, or my kids don't like to read. What can we do? Well, let's make it interactive. You know me, I'm all about fun. I'm all about, just getting up and moving. This is a great way to do that. Use different voices. Encourage your kids to use different voices, different tones. And how is this person going to speak? And what is this person going to say? I remember asking the questions, making it interactive by having the kids predict what's going to happen next. Well, what problem are they solving here? So many ways that you can incorporate different learning tools that are going to make it interactive for your kids. Another great skill here is just like Dr. Seuss did, right? Incorporating rhymes and repetition. So I remember when I had Ella's baby shower, instead of cards, I had everyone bring us a book and everyone signed in the book and it was beautiful. I have all of these books now with everyone's signature in it. And I did that for both kids, Ella and Alex. But I remember distinctly for Ella, I received a nursery rhyme book from one of my grandma's cousins who was a preschool teacher. And she wrote in there how important reading over these nursery rhymes with Ella at the time, my children, was for developing their early reading skills. And I was like, wow, okay. Like I already kind of had an idea of that. I was a teacher. I was a preschool teacher. I worked in daycares. I was a nanny and I was already reading. I had books, and here's my little story where anytime that there were rummage sales, and I may have shared this with you guys, but anytime there'd be rummage sales or yard sales, I was after the books. I had tons of books, bins of books, children's books, chapter books, before I even had kids. Now, yes, I was teaching in the school, so I used a lot of those books in my classroom library. But oh my goodness, the amount of books that I literally have my own library. I think you have to have 1,000 books in your home to have your own library. I have well over 1,000 books for sure. So we have our own little mini library. And I think that is so important too. Just keeping an eye out for books that you'll be able to read with your kids, whether it's right now or whether it's, in the future. So just some fun little tips there. Half price books, if they even still are around. Thrift books, which is online now, are some great ways to get some books. Just keep an eye out for all of those, books that are being passed along, because that's one thing that I love, having books all over. Now let's go back to these nursery rhymes. Right. Hear me out. When I say I know that some of these nursery rhymes, you read them and you're like, whoa, what am I actually reading to my child, right? As we then become parents, we listen to things differently. We read things differently. And we're like, wait a second, you know, but those rhymes and repetition are so good for their development. It's allowing them to kind of guess what comes next. Think of the Cat in the Hat. How many rhyming words are in the Cat in the Hat? How easy is it for our children to start reading a book when they understand that at makes the at, and they could put a C in front of it and it's cat. Now I put an H in front of it and it's hat. Now I put a B in front of it and it's bat. Well, great. Now I can read this whole passage or this whole story because it's around these words. And I don't want to get too much into the reading program, but it's a combination of those rhyming words. It's a combination of those word families, the sight words. I do a blend of it all to really incorporate the confidence for our children to read and to read well. So keep that in mind as well, that we're incorporating all of these skills: rhyming, repetition, word families, sight words, sounding out, phonics, right? All of these things are so important for their development, and the questions. If you can't tell, I'm very passionate about reading with our children, right? I'm so excited to share all of this information with you. And here's another thing that I did with my own kids is when they were little, I had toddler tunes on as our music all the time. So again, we're listening to a lot of those nursery rhymes, those repetitions. Those were always playing. The other thing that we used was Mother Goose Clubhouse. I think that's what it was. And I think it was on Netflix at the time, but they were fun characters. It was, including the rhyming, the nursery rhymes, the music, the words were on the screen so they were able to see what was being said. And of course, some cute characters in there as well. So just keep an eye out for some of those things that are not overstimulating though. Just keep that in mind. some of the shows that are out there now that can be way too overstimulating for our children's brain, and it's causing other issues then. So keep that in mind. And we can dive more into that later in a different episode for sure. All right. Like I said, I'll be sharing a lot more ideas with you about how we can continue to build our children's reading literacy next episode. All right, so let's get into Dr. Seuss reading activities because we're celebrating Dr. Seuss, right? So let's talk about that. So, some of the things that you can do is you can read a Dr. Seuss book together and then act it out. Hop on Pop. That's one of my favorite ones. That's actually a movement idea for Dr. Seuss week that we do because there's so much movement in that. And just make it up, right? It can be hopping. Obviously, you don't want to be hopping on your pop, but all right, let's hop and let's, pretend like we're hitting a ball or whatever that is, right? Act out the stories, make it fun, make up some silly rhymes like Dr. Seuss did. Make up a silly story. It doesn't have to make sense, just have fun with it. And there's another idea that you can have is where someone starts a story and then the next person does the next line of the story and then another person does the next line of the story, right? So you're creating a story that could totally not make sense at all, but you're having fun. You're creating those memories with your family. So keep those in mind as well. Another thing that you can do is you could have your kiddos read a story and then make up their own ending. It could be it can be a Dr. Seuss story and they could totally change the ending of it, right? Have fun with it. It could be a chapter book that they're reading and say, okay, well, come up with a different ending. What do you think else could happen? I remember whenever we were younger, when I was learning how to read and had chapter books, there were books. I really think it was Goosebumps that you could change the story where it was like, well, you could do this or you could do this. So pick which one that you want to do, and then you choose the end of the story. I'm sure there's other books out there like that, but I do remember those stories. And those were fun. And then you could always go back and read the other ending to the story as well and be like, well, which one did I really like? So those are some fun things that you can do with the Dr. Seuss books or with other books. And the other thing are like Dr. Seuss themed snacks and crafts. So green eggs and ham for breakfast. We've done this many different times. I've done it many different ways. Sometimes the kids love it. They liked it when they were younger, didn't like it so much as they got older, but that one's always fun. You could do cat in the hat activities. So if you are interested in different ideas and activities like this, I have a ton of Dr. Seuss ideas, activities, snacks, videos to go along with them. Feel free to check out the EduPlay Learning Dr. Seuss collection, and that link's going to be in the show notes below. Send me a message if you want more information. But this collection is one of my favorites because there's so much that you can do with it. Snacks, games, activities. I even dress up and I have a Thing One t-shirt with the little headband and, just have some fun with it. And if you do want more information or if you're interested in more activities like that, like I said, reach out to me because you can join the whole Home Education with Ease community. And I would share with you different ideas and ways that you can, do a lot of these activities with your kids at home. All right, so let's wrap up with a few things. So how can we make reading a habit? So here are a few ways that you can do this at home. Set a daily reading goal, just like anything else. If you want to work out or if you want to, get in the best shape, you got to set a goal. So the same thing here is if you want your kids to be good readers, set that goal, 10 to 15 minutes a day, whether it's during your school day, if you're homeschooling, whether they come home from school and you read it after school or on their way to activities, or maybe you can do it before school. So think about ways that you can incorporate 10 to 15 minutes a day, or again, right at bedtime, right? How can we incorporate this into our day? And then another thing is leading by example. And let your kids see you enjoying books too. Do you have books? And maybe you don't love to read, but maybe you can listen to a story or just grab a book and read with your kids and start to develop that love for reading for you, maybe, and for your kids. Well, I encourage you today. grab a book, grab a Dr. Seuss book for Dr. Seuss Week, read across America, and read with your kids today. If you don't have one, check out the library. You can find some on Amazon, I'm sure. Maybe you can borrow some from your neighbors, or even I'm sure YouTube has some as well. So keep that in mind. There's many ways that you can enjoy a Dr. Seuss story this week. But I would love to hear from you. Again, I would love to hear what's your child's favorite book or series? And do you have a favorite Dr. Seuss memory, or maybe your kids have one as well? And I want you to, feel free to share that in the Home Education with Ease Facebook group. That link's in the show notes below, or message me, because I would love to feature you and some of your stories on upcoming episodes. So I love sharing about your wins, your educational fun and activities that you have with your kids, and share that with the other families. And as always, don't forget, I love when you just reach out to me. Let me know what your biggest takeaway was from this episode. You can do that in the Facebook group. You could send me a message. Even if you left me a review, that helps so, so much. And sharing with other families that this would really be encouraging for them as well. So don't forget, I mentioned a couple times you could check out the Dr. Seuss collection, the EduPlay Learning Dr. Seuss collection, full of activities, ideas, and videos. You could even reach out for more information about the EduPlay Learning reading programs that I have, Learn Your Letters, Reading Fundamentals, and helping your kids really build their reading foundation for reading and their confidence. So here, I'm going to leave you with this quote from Dr. Seuss. It says, "The more you read, the more things you will know. The more that you learn, the more places you'll go." I love that so much because I truly love learning, reading, and just inspiring our kids to just be really lifelong learners. Well, stay tuned for episode 63 as we continue this topic and discuss what to do if your child is struggling reading. Thanks so much for joining today, guys. Thank you for tuning in to the Home Education with Ease podcast. I hope today's episode left you feeling empowered and ready to take the next steps on your home education journey. Your support means the world to me. Please subscribe, leave a review, and share with a friend. For even more resources, be sure to join the free Facebook group, Home Education with Ease, and visit eduplaylearning.com to explore programs and subscription kits. You can find the links and any other links mentioned in this episode in the show notes below. Remember, you're not alone. This community is here to support you every step of the way.